Hey everyone, super quick before we jump in, this is a video done with DogxWisdom or Dog of Wisdom. Y'all may know him as Henrico, an incredibly accomplished One Piece player. He got top 8 at Worlds. He was European champion, a number of accolades under his belt. He joins me today to go and talk Enel Masterclass. I've played Enel. We both share ideas, and I ask him a bunch of questions to provide value for the community. He did this absolutely for free for you all, which is incredible. He does have a guide, which at the end of this video, there is a discount code for if you haven't already, and I believe this is in his guide as well. So I think it's great supplemental and just an introduction to the deck, and covers many, many things, especially with the removal of Holly and an early peek at kind of that. He continually updates his guides. I think if we go here, you can see there's the Enel one. Here's some stuff. My favorite, truthfully, and it's available in multiple languages as well, is his commentary. I think I actually bought this too. Maybe it was the world I bought this. I did not buy this, but I bought the Ace one for sure. I know that. As you can see, I bought this one. I bought these with my own money, so if you want to support him, you can do that here. And then if you haven't already, you can go check out my website, vamptcg.com. He doesn't know if this is in here, so if he includes it in his guide, well, free ad. But vamptcg.com, I have all of the leader case except for yellow. We should have this back in stock maybe by the time this video goes live. But all of these have my own branding on them. They are very cool. None of this is possible without each and every one of you. So thank you all so much, and be sure to check this out. What's going on, everyone? Vampyr Gaming here, and today I am joined by none other than Mr. Lightning himself, DogxWisdom, aka Henrico. You all may know him from just the most iconic tweets you've ever seen. And if not, he is an incredible European player who has been to Worlds, and on top of that has a number of tops to boot. Incredibly excited to have you on here today. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for the invite. It's great to be here. I'm actually surprised this is the first time we do a video together. So
I know, it's really, I'm telling you, it's the European time makes it very hard, just because I go to work, and then in the hours that I'm available is usually very early in the morning for Europe, or it's incredibly early and I'm waking up at 2 to 3 a.m. to do a video, or even
that's
like
dedication.
Exactly. So that's usually the challenge. It's a little bit easier with Asia because they're pretty much like a day ahead. So my nighttime is their daytime, and it works pretty nice. So I would love to have you on more. Again, it's really just a matter of timing. So incredibly excited to have you. Obviously, gonna dive in. So we're gonna talk all things Enel today. We're gonna talk some of the different builds. We're going to go through a lot of the tech choices. We're going to talk about general matchups, and then the bulk of the video, I want to spend a lot of time in the mirror because there's a lot of nuances there. We'll finish off talking mulligans and a couple other things, whatever may pop up. And then at the end, we'll have a discount code as well for his guide. So definitely be sure to stay to the end and check that out. This is also pretty much in partnership with him for his guide. He agreed to come on, so incredibly excited to provide this video. So once again, thank you. We'll go ahead and jump in here to the deck list. So to start off, we're going to talk about, this is the deck list he provided in his guide. This is the updated one, of course, the senior pink, more control build, but I'll pass it over to you, Henrico, really to kind of dive in on the deck and explain what we got going on here.
So this was the deck list I played in Lille as well. Was the first, I think the first regional, P15 in general. Actually, one of the biggest ones we ever had in Europe.
Yeah, that was the first 1,500.
Yeah. So it was actually a very long tournament that we did expect. So since it was also the first one, we decided to go with a very generic list. I actually discovered Senior Pink. I think it was because I was on a holiday with my parents, and then like one of my friends sent me this card, and I was like, this card seems good. So it's funny because the card is not meant to be for Enel, but the card fits so well. in the deck that in the beginning I was playing 4, and then I decided to cut it down to 2 because I decided to go with a kind of hybrid version. So in the beginning I was playing more controlish, but then we ended up with this. Then in a blind tournament, I think it was a very nice choice. Going back, probably we would have changed some things, and then we can discuss this later. But overall, we were 4 people with the same deck list, and we topped 3 out of 4. So I think it was still fine. Pretty good results. But yeah, I think it's not that easy to find the best build for Enel, because you need to like make decisions depending on the meta. I think the meta is quite open as well. So yeah, not that easy. Still today, I'm not I changed my list like every day. So
yeah, and it's funny because we were just talking, and I remember you mentioning that you don't enjoy the color green in One Piece. However, I will
Yes.
make an analogy here about green. So the biggest thing for green is it has a very okay generic card pool. Like, all the cards are okay. They're not bad. It has a lot of not bad cards, and they all are very responsive to different kind of scenarios. So green in the meta as a whole has always been very responsive to everything going on. In the same manner, Enel has the same benefits. Originally, everyone was playing the Porsche build. We'll talk a bit about Porsche later in the video, but a lot of people were playing the Porsche build, and with that came the rise of green for a very short period of time because they have Electric Luna, and the whole deck was an Electric Luna target. So the moment everything went sideways, or the moment that they had played a 4-cost Nami, every single card on your board was forced sideways, and they would just freeze you for a number of turns until they could win and or not lose. So since then, we've, of course, evolved to the Reiju build, which Reiju becomes a 9-cost, so it's very hard to remove from a cost perspective, and it can't be frozen or stunned while also being a 7k body, which is just 2 huge pros on there. And then, of course, Vari being an addition as well. At one point, I think early Enel builds, some people just played 4 of every event just because the events are arguably some of the best cards in the package, but it quickly made its way out because it was really more deemed a flex spot. And here we have it, of course, as 2 as well, because again, people were really both yellow and green, yellow being really good as well just because of the Thriller Bark package, and Vari and Reiju being unable to be targeted by Perona became huge as well. And then, of course, being able to buff up your Enels when going for lethal after they just stacked the Kumasi in their life for you to see. So a lot of different directions that the deck can take. Of course, Divine Departure and Gamma Knives as well, both contributing to removal factors, and Divine Departure, 1 being really good in the mirror, and then 2 being even better against things like Nami when they play the Newgate, which they've adopted even more Newgates before. Many were on 2. Now I've seen lists with 4. So a lot of different directions that the deck can take, both in just ratios, and then purple as a whole lost its color identity. Originally, purple was ramp. We have some of the best minus power in purple. We have Ohm that minuses power. We have draw cards. We have literally everything in this. You have stun, which was kind of a green thing, you know? So purple as a whole has some of the best cards in the game.
Yeah, indeed. I agree. I think with Enel, they kind of broke the rule of this color a little bit. They gave him basically, because a lot of people, they compared this to like Lucci or like Sakazuki back in the days, and like purple, of course, we know is like it's supposed to be like ramp, but actually, because you actually ramp with this deck, but like everything is 0 cost, so like you can basically remove everything with like 2 down that is like too strong, I believe. But yeah, I think it's very different from like old purple decks that we used to play.
Yes, and this is the conglomerate of just letting purple do whatever. And this deck literally has everything. And on top of that, of course, you have your leader ability. So before, minus Dawn was a cost, but Enel as a whole rewards you for minusing Dawn, then gives you it all back. So really, you're like, oh, it's a 6 Dawn leader, it's fair, but in reality, it's 11 because you're going to spend the 6th and you're going to get 5 back. And so he's really one more Dawn than everyone else. And it's all you really need. So let's go ahead and jump in here to the no dog build, which is starting to rise in popularity. You had posted a picture of the dog in the trash and you were like, see you later, friend. Something like that. It was very funny. And everybody was like, oh, you know, whenever there's anything, everybody needs the 50. When in reality, Enel as a whole, I think the biggest thing, and it's funny because I was talking to Impact and he's like, it's very hard to build a bad Enel deck, mostly because one, the leader ability is so strong, even if you're playing suboptimal cards, the leader himself is that broken that everything is pretty much good. And then on top of that, of course, there are so many great purple cards. So that's obviously the dog argument is it's good, but could we have better things? And with the popularity of Enel 2, many find that the dog is less good in the mirror because it gives your opponent a lot more resources, and it's also quite easy to be removed, and then you really didn't establish anything. Whereas when you play a card like Frankie, you go card neutral, and then of course your Reiju is a 7k, which is a lot harder to remove overall and can get a lot more value with each block that she's able to do as well. So a lot of different things going on. It of course makes it a lot harder because Dog was one of the best cards against Nami, and so you have to really lock in. Dog allowed you to really kind of, I don't want to say cheese games, but he provided you a level of aggression that the deck has kind of moved away from as we got into control and more. A lot of people, like you were saying, like to compare it to Sakazuki or Lucci. People are calling Senior Pink the new Rebecca Hina Lucci and things like that. So really, I know you've been playing around with the no dog build. So really want to know your thoughts on the build overall and kind of what makes sense to replace the dog with.
So my theory behind the dog is that because I was like really one of the biggest ambassadors of the dog back in the days, and like a lot of things that I used to say, if I go back to my messages like 2 weeks ago, I'm like, I was so dumb. So by testing more and more, I think that the dog was a really nice card, since we were lacking some like skill with the deck, at least for like the last regional, and he used to, like you just said, to carry games by himself. But I think that's power you don't really need when you start learning the deck to a very high level. And I think the problem with the dog is that once you reach that point of skill with the deck, it's just a dead card like most parts of the game. So what I've been trying to do without like playing the deck list without the dog was that like I wanted to have a list that like only has good draws and good top decks, like cycling cards or like cards that I need to play. So like only tools that I can just play right away instead of having like, because the dog, the problem is that if you draw it and like from a certain point of the game in any matchup, like if you draw it, it's just gonna be a 1k. So with the new builds, and I also saw those from the Asian players, I think they realized, okay, if we reach a level of skill with this deck, we are not gonna need those like free games that we will get thanks to the dog. And also by the latest testings against Nami, for example, and like Bell Luffy, they should be like the toughest matchups. I didn't feel like I needed the dog to win because I found new patterns that I could make use of to just win the game. And in the end, I was like, okay, if this card, the only reason for this card is like to draw it in my first hand in like 2 specific matchups, then I'd rather just cut it and make it more consistent for like all the other matchups. So right now I feel more confident with the no dog build just because I think I learned those matchups where like I used to rely too much on the dog. And actually also in coaching, I tend to say to a lot of people, like, try to train with this list, even if you are going to play the dog, because the gains that you're not going to see the dog, you will need to know what to do. And I think you can still play the dog, but like you're just gonna have less edge probably in the mirror match, where like it's a very grindy matchup where like every card matters. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like the dog gives you this like you rely, if you start playing with the dog, you rely too much on it, and then probably when you're not gonna see it, you will just lose because you don't know how to play without it. So I feel like the card is not needed anymore right now. If the player is not an expert of NL, I recommend to still play it. And that's why, like, to a lot of people that ask me, like, should I cut the dog now? I'm like, you have to train without it, and then when you're gonna feel confident enough, you can cut it. But I never recommend to cut it to like a new player to the deck. But,
That makes
but yeah.
sense. Yeah, and it can, of course, it's one of those, it's funny because sometimes I'll have conversations with my friends just on deck building in general that some cards just promote bad play. So I try not, like, sometimes I'll just cut it from my deck as a whole, just so that way, because it's like, it's so good, and you just get so used to it being so good that you're like, well, I really want to play this, and it might even be a gamble. And yeah, I feel like the dog can definitely be one of those, just because when you see it, you're like, oh, this deck's the goo, right? Or when you go into Porsche into dog and you're like, I'm so winning, you know, just different instances like that. It feels incredible. And you're like, this is the greatest card ever printed. And then everybody's like, ban the dog. And now everybody's like, I don't even want to play the dog anymore. Because it's one of those cards that it's good exclusively on one turn. And then it's not good on every turn after that. And so it, of course, being a 3/4 as well was very balanced. It's not even like it can poke 4 cards. You have to commit. And we're really a purple curve deck that's giving Dawn to 1 card. And we usually want to do that to our little, so that way we can poke and just ask for more free cards from our opponents and really just grind them to dust. So I'm really interested, of course, with no dog, what is the curve looking like? So this list, of course, has 4 Charlotte Pudding, and that's with no dog in mind. When you play Charlotte Pudding, you don't have to give up a Dawn to replace the card. And so in this, when you're going, instead of having 3, so you can use your 1 or use both of yours going second, you really want to make sure you have 1 Dawn standing. So Charlotte Pudding allows you to keep a Dawn standing, and if you need to, she allows you to kind of filter your hand by finding the pieces you need, but then you can also cycle to still draw a card with one of the cards in your hand because she doesn't command that Dawn minus. So there is that bonus as well. But what is the ideal, especially going first? Are we really just playing Pudding? Are we prioritizing 1 drops in the no dog build? How are we really approaching our early game since we don't have the 3 anymore?
I think if you run the no dog build, you will rely more on the 4 drops on turn 2. It depends a lot on the matchup, but like I really like now with this build, and like normally now I'm playing like 3 Frankie instead of 2. I was on 4 before, but I felt like 1 was like I didn't need like 4, so I wanted to play 3. And with these many 4 drops, you can now just play the turn 1 based on like if you go first or second to just leave 1 Dawn, like you just said, and then you just play the 4 drop on turn 2. And then you just try to establish a big board already as from the beginning of the game. So like that's why Pudding is now preferred over Satori in my view, just because she allows you to still perform that first turn without problems, and then you can just develop your 4-cost body on turn 2, especially against Nami now. If you play with the no dog build, I think it's very important to just develop any 4-drop on turn 2. So I think, especially with this new build, it allows you to do that consistently. And I don't despite Pudding. I think she misses way too many times, but like she allows you to have more consistency in developing board early on. So she's fine. But I think this build will change a lot. It's very. I would never say. Mhm. Yeah, what I wanted to say is that I don't think it will be easy to say this is gonna the build for NL and call it a day. I think it's just going to change constantly until the end of the meta. And I think in OP16, this might as well be still a tier 1 deck, and we will see it changing depending on the new cards. Also, I think like the deck is right now too generic, and it might create problems for the future for the game design, because like any purple card that says -stone, do something, might just break the deck even more. So I think right now the approach that we found was not meant to be the one from Bandai. And that is dangerous, of course, because we saw it in the past already. But yeah, I like the fact that the deck is so open that you can like do whatever you want, and this more controlish version I like a lot, because it gives you a lot of room for like to express the player skill, and yeah, you can basically solve every matchup with it.
Yes, yeah. Honestly, genuinely, there's not a doubt in my mind that this leader gets banned. Either this leader gets banned, or every leader we get, like OP17, OP18, is just going to be absurd, and that this deck isn't even going to be good. So it's going to be one of the two.
Counter Enel.
Yeah. So we'll see. It wouldn't be the first time that they've done it in a meta, so it'll be really interesting. I know the outside of Teach, all of OP16 is quite underwhelming to me so far in comparison to what we saw in OP15. So very interested to see the direction that it take. Last question here for the deck list overall. I really want to know your thoughts on, so a lot of people have been trimming down. Originally at one point, like early, we also just played 4 secret, 4 super, and then we've just continually cut down for flex on the blocker Enel, which also allows you the infinite combo loop for lethal, which is just an insane combo as well. Really want to know how you feel, because these are key cards that you really want to see against decks like Nami, which is one of the second most popular deck. How do you feel about the 6-drop count overall? Are you still like, you think it's 6? You think 5's okay? Some people have cut the blocker completely.
I'm on 5 as well right now. I just been trying if that's the right number for Enel. I've been playing with 4 for a long time, and I felt like I had to win without it a lot of times. That's why I increased to 5 now. But it's very difficult to say, because I played 6 in Lille, and I always had 1 extra Enel in my hand. But I always had the consistency to see it when I wanted to. So I think 5 might be the right spot. And yeah, I'm not a fan of the blocker Enel, but like I cannot play 5 secret Enels. So but I think 5 seems right. I also saw when Wazinia's build, and he was playing 5 as well. Statistically speaking, I think with 4 is a bit underwhelming. But yeah, I now trained myself to win without it, so that I was fine with playing 4. And with 6, I think it's quite enough to see them on curve most of the times. But yeah, I think we now have a problem with slots, because a lot of people want to increase the 1 drops, they want to increase the 4 drops, they want to play 3 senior pink, they want to play 2 divine departure, 1 divine departure. Like it's very difficult to find the right amounts, but it's all about percentages. I think probably 1 extra small guy matters less than 1 extra Enel, at least in my view. Sometimes the extra divine departure could help you against like Tankos New Gates, mostly against like tier 2 decks. And yeah, also I think it's a very nice card. Right now, for example, I'm playing 3 just for the cycling. I'm trying to make the deck as consistent as possible. I think that's the most important thing, because I think the most important thing with Enel is that you always have like your combo when your opponent is going to play their key piece. Yeah, so you need to find the right stuff at the right moment. So consistency is everything, but also playing the Enel on curve is going to allow you to make your gains much easier most of the times. So I think for now I would say 5, but this could change. Some people was trying 0 as well, but I don't know if that's correct.
It was me on people. Well, cool. And then so moving on, really want to talk through just some scenarios here. These are all different game states, and really just want to get your thoughts on what the correct line and approach is in each one of these. So this is against blue yellow Nami. So at the time did not know that every single card in their hand was counter. How, like, they just had the god hand. They of course just played the Gecko Moria, put Kumasi into life, which will of course freeze. We have no Vari. However, we have all the means to remove this at the start of our turn. We have 1 life and we have 2 blockers. Now, if we have to give up the blockers, we of course lose a lot of pressure on our board. What I did, and I was so certain I would just draw another card, was you can definitely buy another turn here. I pushed lethal because I was like, there's just no way, right? There's no way. I was like, I got it. And if I draw 1 more minus event, I should just have math. And I did not. And so then I lost. And I was like, great. But I think here, and really interested to hear what your thoughts are as well. I think it's just Divine Departure, Mamaragon, the Gecko Moria, and then Answer the Gecko. We do have Ohm. We, of course, unlikely to contest the Robin, but we can have push just for that last life as well and command cards through the process if we really want to, because we have Holly to swing, so we can go there. We can push with the Enel as well just to make sure he doesn't get Kuma'd, because we're going to leave up the 2 blockers. But really interested to know what you would do. So we have Divine Departure, we've got Mamaragon, we do have Lightning Dragon as well, so we can stun the Nami, which takes that attack off us as well. But really intrigued. Feel free to take a moment, take in the board state, and then share with us what you would do in this situation.
Let's see. Is that life faced up or?
It's so the Kuma's face up. We know it's face up. Our life is face down. But this was what I pulled out of life.
No, we don't care about her life. It's just if you want to trade the Nami or not.
These are just. This is.
Turn.
They had a bunch of 2Ks. Is really moral of the story, but we didn't know that.
Yeah, of course. Without the information, I would play the same. Probably I would go for like. Because I think you need to still push even though you go with some kind of control turn. So I wouldn't go on the Nami for sure. Even though you can trade it now, I think you still need to push, because otherwise you risk that they just play Borsalino and kind of like delay the game again.
Yeah.
So you can for sure. Let's see. Yeah, I would say Gamma Knife is okay. I'm just thinking where to give the Dawn, probably. Because you can also trim their hand a little bit with like what do you have on board. Let's see. Because even if they trigger some Thriller Bark, we don't really care about that.
Yeah, well, we know it's a face-up Kuma, so we know that they're going to, because they stacked it with the Gecko, so we know that they're going to trigger it.
Yeah. Let's see. We can probably give a Dom to. I think also Leader is fine. We could say, okay, down to the Leader, Divine, Mamaragan on the Moria, and then we can just swing with the to whatever. Then we freeze the Nami. We see what we draw. Like, it doesn't really matter what we draw, honestly. Then we can go 6-on-4 with that Leader and see what happens. And then if he saves, we can just assign downs to the dog.
Wait, 6-on-4 where?
On the Moria.
It should be. He would be a 2. Divine's -8.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, then
so you can poke it with Ohm 2 at 1.
My head was like Gamma Knife.
Yeah. All good.
Yeah, we can just trade with the Ohm then, and then it depends if they save it. Probably they won't save it, so that's fine. Then probably the Dawn we can give to. I think it's probably better to just give to the dog, or we can give it to a Rage as well. But it doesn't really matter here, because I think we can push with one Reiju and the Enel. And then we can keep, because they probably need to trigger It depends what the trigger as well, because the thing is that you can always keep the leader at the end to just swing on a Perona eventually.
Yeah, they're
So I
gonna
think
play Perona, 100%, right?
Okay.
Like, because otherwise they play Hogback, so it'd probably just be Perona. Assuming, unless if you do swing, obviously if you assign Dawn to dog, like you could swing with Enel first, and then they trigger, then they freeze something, which would just make sense to be the dog, because Reiju wouldn't be a target, and then you can just assign the Dawn to the Reiju and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think the thing is that you don't really care about like this extra down that you have doesn't really matter in this spot. Probably would matter if we didn't know his life, but probably here, because the only difference is that like once you ramp, if you assign to your leader, you can do an extra 7.
Right.
So like if you assign to the leader, you can do like divine on the Moria, then rest 2-on-1 is gonna die, and then you can go like 10 lead with your Enel. They're gonna trigger probably, and if they don't, like you can just go probably leader effect, buff the dog, and then go 9 again. And if they actually do, then you can just go 7 with leader and then 11 with Reiju, or like you can also go like on the Perona as well to trade if you want. But actually, it depends what we draw. But like I think we have good counter in our hands. We should be fine with just 1 blocker and 1 life, because he only has like 3 swings. So yeah, I would say rest, kill, 10 leads, and then if they take, you can go 11 with the rage as well. 7-11. You can also go 7 on the Perona and then 11 leads. And like you just need to count based on what you draw, and then you either go on the Perona and kill it, or like you just go face. But I think this game it's very hard for them to come back, because even if they draw the Borsalino, then they're gonna have very few cards in hand, because if you go 10 first and they take, and then you go 11, they need to discard 1, 2,
4.
3, 4 cards, and then you have an extra 7 that you can do, so it would be 5, and then next turn they would only have 3 to 4, so it would be mathematical basically with double rage. So yeah, I wouldn't go lethal, honestly. It's because you never know.
Yeah. Would you swing both Reijus then? If assuming that you got rid of the Perona, would you just swing the extra Reiju for life, since they only have 2 bodies to swing at your life with? And would you worry about them going after your board if you turned both Reijus?
I wouldn't swing with both, just because in the end you only get one extra card, and you risk that they might just trade and stabilize. But it really depends on your hand counters as well. Yeah, I would say let's say the split would be for them like 11-12, I think. Okay. I mean, if you can counter 11-12, probably you can swing with that as well. But the risk that you have is that they just go, depending on the counters, of course, they might just go on the Reijus, trade both, and then maybe they like just do Borsalino, and then maybe they put in life a Thriller Bark, and then they just freeze one of the guys, and then you miss lethal, basically. So like a very remote possibility that you don't win. So I would always play it a bit safer. But like if your hand is like you already have departure, so like if you would say you counter everything, I would just avoid.
Okay.
Because probably you can also avoid them. Like if they wanna get back alive, at least they might not even inflict you a damage, and in that case they wouldn't draw. So in the end you get the same results, because they don't have an extra card basically.
Got it. Okay. And then so we Divine Departure minus the Gecko, rest the Gecko with Mamaragon. Then we will trade it with Ohm, and if they give us counter, we just put the dog into it, but it'll be 2 into 1, so we get a free 2k. And then afterwards, we will swing with the leader, see if they take. If not, and then we didn't swing dog, we can go 9 at the leader. And then if so, and then they freeze the dog, then we can go 7 at the Perona, and then we can push leader and have the 4 on the Reiju and go 11 and command a bunch of cards, while also Lightning Dragon freezing the Nami. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Of course, if you buff the dog, then your leader needs to go 6, but you can go 6 on the Perona anyway, so that's fine to get a 2k.
Cool. Now the second scenario. So this one, a little bit more basic, but really just want to know your approach. So going into your third turn, you go second, you go into here, you have 3 Dawn. Don't have any 1-drops. So they, of course, have already won the 1-drop war out of the gate. We have Reiju and Dog. So if we want to play Dog, we can play Dog and then ramp 3. Or if we want to spit out Reiju and try to start cycling events, we can do that as well. But let's say you don't, on the 10% chance you simply just don't see 1 costs versus the mirror to start off. What is generally your approach to trying to win that? Like, because we could play the Dog, ramp up, start cycling to see if we can find one, and then play it out. So you could just play 3, start cycling, then ramp back up and see if we have a 1 to play out of the 1, potentially a Shura. Like, what is generally your approach when you've already lost the 1-cost war early on in the mirror is really what we're looking for.
I think in this specific spot, playing Reiju is pretty bad because if they actually have access to Mamaragan, they can just 6 on 4 with home. So I would avoid doing that unless you want to do like ramp, play Reiju, then Mamaragan on the home, and then just kill it. But it's still kind of dangerous because if they have a Kiran, then it's punished. So I would say I will play the Dog here, cycle RRV, see what I get. If I get like Eltor, I just destroy home, kill the Satori. If I get a 1-drop, we can still cycle maybe the Mamaragan, kill the Om, and then if we get a 1-drop, we just play it. If we get an Eltor, we can kill the other guy. Usually what I try to do is I just try to kill both guys. I sometimes spend my Mamaragans as well, just because it's kind of free, especially with this end that is kind of stuck. I think it's nice to cycle away also the Mamaragan because you make sure that you increase your chances to find a 1-drop, for example. And of course, if you get Shura or Aeltor, you're in a way better spot. Other than that, I think home is usually the premium card to remove, especially in the early game. It's also here like home could clear the Dog very much. It's much easier to clear the Dog with the home.
Yeah, because they just free Mama, right?
Yeah. I would say like this is especially in the beginning of the game. It's fine to just cycle 1 away to get rid of the home. You won't need so many in the mirror match, anyways. I mean, the more the better, but like it's not like a card that like I wasted 1 of them, because sometimes you also use it to counter. So I'd rather use it here to clear the home and like increase my chances that my Dog is gonna survive. But like the thing is that because you're going first or second here, because you already have 6 stone.
We are going second, so they had first.
Okay.
I think. So, we were going second. We were going second because we have 3. So we only minused 1 Dawn for the cycle the first turn. So we already cycled 1, and then we go up to 3. So they went first.
So yeah, that's an extra reason to cycle this away, because we need to find also an answer to the Enel. Because if he's going to play Enel on the next turn and we don't have Gamma Knife, for example, it would be a problem. So like playing the Dog, cycling twice, killing the Om, and then maybe next turn we can go like Reiju, Gamma Knife, Mamaragan, use the Dog to kill the Enel, and we should be okay. So I think it's important to cycle when you're missing pieces for like stuff that you know is gonna come. And like I think some people is afraid of like cycling away Mamaragan a lot of times. But I think here it's fine because you're just killing the Om and you're giving yourself a chance to draw either Shura or Eltor to clear the other guy and get board control, basically.
Got it. Okay. And then just, again, prioritize Om because the minus power and then also the potential, if they're playing Dog, that they will become a 6 and it's a lot harder to remove at that point.
Yeah. Also because you are removing the -1, so they cannot just Mamaragan on it. While the Reiju is already a target. And also you know that next turn you can make her a 7k, so I'd rather just wait 1 turn.
Got it. Okay. And then the last scenario, so kind of flipped here, but this is, of course, against Ace. Ace, I feel, is a little bit harder, especially with a lot of people cutting down on Divine, with that being the best way to contest the Newgate. So we, of course, have all the pieces here. Divine Departure, we've got Keaton, we've got Elthor, which is the perfect combo to mathematically get rid of the Newgate. Of course, in this matchup as well, 6 costs are your win con. We've already established 2. We have the blocker as well in case we want to eat those attacks. They've been hitting us with boas, obviously. What is your approach here? Do you think it's worth establishing the blocker, turning it live, right? Or is it Divine Departure? Should we just instantly prioritize removing the Newgate since we have the opportunity to? And genuinely, with the Senior Pink, the approach is if there's a threat and we can remove it, we remove it. If not, establish. And if possible, of course, establish and remove is the ideal scenario. So really interested to know what your approach on this turn would be.
I think in the ace matchup especially, I mean, this is a quite specific scenario, but like usually if you already establish a good board with an L and you have possibility to clear your opponent's board, you always do it. Especially here where you can actually make an NL a removal basically. So what I would do is like assign a Dawn to my leader, Divine on the Newgate, then you can just -1, and then if you don't get the Mamaragan, you can just Deltor, and then you can decide what you want to do. Like you have several options, but I think the best is you just go a leader effect. If you don't want to cycle, of course, if you draw cycling events, you can also do that. And then I would just go like 14 on 8 on the boa. I want to make sure she dies to relieve some pressure. And then depending on that, we can go like 8 lead with our leader because he's buffed from the Eltor and he has 1 extra down, and we also have the extra active down. And then we can go 10 lead as well. But yeah, of course, it depends on the draws. You could think about developing the Shura as well for the next turn. And if you draw, like, for example, Mamaragan, you can Mamaragan and kill the Atmos as well to full clear. But I think it's quite important to clear your opponent's board as much as possible, especially against Ace, because if you leave stuff on board, it's going to snowball. I think it's quite important to clear as much as possible. And that's also why, like, going back to the Divine Departure talk, like, I don't like to play 1 because if they play 1 Newgate and you don't have it, it's going to be a problem. Because if you cannot clear 1 Newgate, then if they play a second one, it's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Because this deck cannot clear 2 very big guys. And you cannot even clear it with, like, even if you go 14 on 12, it's not going to be guaranteed. So I think that's the best approach. Because this turn you can fully clear and pressure the Ace and put them in the lethal range, as well as denying basically their leader effect twice. Because you're killing the Newgate, they draw 1, but then you kill the boa, they don't draw, and then you inflict the damage face and they don't draw again. So it's pretty good. But yeah, of course you have to be careful about them aggroing. Being a 2 life here is quite dangerous.
Got it. Yeah. And so interesting is to kind of, it's funny because like talking about it, we have semi open deck knowledge, right? Like we know what the trend for a deck list is. I'll make another green analogy. When you play against green, you never really know what's inside, what's under the hood. You know the good green cards, but could they be, it's rotated out now, but 10 cost Doflamingo, all these other different things. Am I about to play into this thinking that they just don't play it? I think the best one is Yamato. There's never been 2 of the same Yamato deck lists, so you never entirely know what you're swinging into. So Ace a lot of times moved away from the Newgates against Enel, mostly because of the Divine Departure. If you give me 2 Gamma Knife, like that's a pretty good trade on our end because it costs you're not going to be able to remove something else, but the Divine Departure is the ultimate trade unit. And a lot of people have, like originally and in early Asia as well, people were playing 3 to 4 because it was really good in the mirror as well before we were playing Senior Pink and just chaining Mama and Gamma Knife, and then we're like, oh, that's so much better than playing 4 Divine Departures. Divine Departure was so huge. So now, as aces have kind of got keen on the lower Divine Departure count, it's like, well, this is very hard for you to remove. And if you removed any of my bodies with a Gamma Knife already, you have to have 2 more to be able to remove this guy. So now they're getting a little bit more greedy and playing it out, and it's a lot more incentivized, because before they would just not play new gates and just play other better bodies. Now, you know, there's the argument to play the new gate again. So really, really just wanted to know kind of like, you know, of course we had it and your thoughts there.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, then again, I think the new gate is the only reason why we should play 2 Divine. I think he's the only guy that requires Divine to be removed.
And the same Nami up there. We talked about it earlier. Nami up there. I've seen Nami's playing 4. I've seen 3-4 when before they were playing 2.
And actually, the main reason is for the mirror match and not for us. But
I know,
we,
but
we kind of get this
the backlash.
yes, basically. Yeah. But I always like to see Divine Departures kind of like the emergency button. I also called it like this in the guide. Because like whatever, like if you don't have the combo, because sometimes you might happen to have like Mamoragan but no Gamma Knife, and vice versa. And having Divine like sometimes helps you so much.
Yes.
And I don't really see any downside to this card, like because you also kind of break sometimes with Enel, so having this card is so good. I don't know, it's just insane.
I did lose one game because I needed a 1K and the last card in my hand was Divine Departure, and I was like, felt bad. But I do like it as a whole, and I think again it is, to your point, you can consider it the emergency button because you don't typically you want to establish and remove, because then you're playing something. When you do, of course, the Divine Departure, if you do have the opportunity, like you said, to play like a Shura, and you can do that, so you could still step, but you're not really playing any true threats. So we'll go ahead and jump in here to the should be the deck engines. Yeah, so we're going to talk about the different engines here. We're not going to talk about Sanji Pudding. I just wanted to include it here, but this is just bad. It's funny, but it's bad.
The OGs in your pink.
Yes. And so, funny enough, I wanted to, of course, talk about the Charlotte Cracker, the Cracker Barrel build, because this card actually solves the number one problem with the deck that Porsche also solves, but in a funnier way, in the fact that it's recurring, and you have recurring on demand minus as well, which is one card that I really wanted as a whole. So what you do is, and they're all blockers, you have a bunch of 5/5, I don't even know, Biscuit Warriors. You have a bunch of 5/5 Biscuit Warriors that are all blockers, and you play a ton of those because you can play more than 4 in your list. And Cracker allows you to Dawn -1, you can play one from your hand for free. So what he allows you to do is go super wide, which is something you typically couldn't do before. So you can play a 6 cost, then you can also play out a body, which is insane in theory. However, it's not good on the card economy wise. So it's neg and just card economy, but it allows you to be more aggressive than any other version of the deck in the most funny way. And they're blockers, so if they don't answer them, you get to block with them later potentially. Now, this card, of course, in the mirror, Mamoragan target, easiest Mamoragan of their life. However, in any other matchup where this card gets to stay, you're allowed to continually, again, you can play a 6 cost, then you can play another body out, which allows you to play 2 bodies every single turn no matter what you're doing, which you, again, just can't do outside of Porsche, and then Porsche can't do that after the turn she's played. So I want to know if you had tried this build genuinely, and then I'm sure you've seen it. Even if you haven't tried it, I would love to know your just initial thoughts, because I think the conversation is worth having. I don't think it's bad. I think it's better than a lot of them. But again, I mentioned earlier, it's very hard to make a bad Enel deck.
Yeah, that is true. I didn't try the Cracker version, even though I know that it exists. I think it's kind of similar to the Porsche build. But the main issue, I think, is that Nami exists as a deck. So having a lot of 5Ks doesn't solve the issue of the deck. That is like Nami. What I don't like about this card is that you need to fill your deck with like dead cards. And that is like the same principle that we were talking about before with the dog. Like you want to avoid having like bad draws or like cards that don't cycle themselves.
Yeah.
And I think this is like the prime version of like that principle. So like you have a lot of dead cards in the deck. Maybe if we shift towards a meta where like there is a really big NL counter, but it suffers like whiteboards, this might be play. But I think in the end the Porsche build is like the better version of this probably, because you can basically solve with Porsche and Dog the same issue that Cracker and like the Biscuit Warriors will solve. So I think he's just Copper deck, probably.
I did see. I think it won a store champ, which was really funny too. But again, it is very much up there on the meme aspect. However, it does solve the one ask you could have, is an ability to establish 2 threats in the same turn, and if it sticks, you can kind of run away, and they're blockers. But I know exactly what you mean. It pretty much kind of promotes bad gameplay in the same regard. Again, it's definitely good just because Enel's really good, and if anybody sticks and you don't play a mirror and it doesn't just get Mama Ragoned, you're still up. But with the same regard as Porsche, you get to, of course, play a body. But then you're going to have, if you lost your Cracker, you're going to have a bunch of Cracker or Biscuit Warriors that you just can't play. Or so it does give you a lot more dead cards. So I see what you're saying there. And then, of course, we'll jump into the Porsche. So Porsche was honestly my favorite version of this deck. I did very well with the Porsche build. I feel like the world hates me when I play Senior Pink build, but I think that's part of a me problem. And so Porsche is quite simple. You play Porsche. Some people even cut the Foxy, and they were just like, I'm just going to whiff, and I'm going to play out this for the sake of other 2Ks or the sake of space. So Porsche allowed you to play out Porsche Dog on 3, which was incredibly aggressive, especially when we weren't playing control. So we weren't optimized to remove these outside of a Mama Ragon. We were still playing, we still played Gamma Knife because it's such a good card, but we weren't playing it to the degree that we are now. And then Divine Departure, it's just not an option to answer this. So you had to have Mama Ragon and or a Gamma Knife and El Thor, which would be -2 cards from your hand overall, which was very good for the player who made you waste those. So I think Porsche is a lot worse into the current mirror, but I think Porsche as a whole is very good into pretty much every other deck out there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it depends heavily on the meta, and that actually, that's funny because I was a big fan of the Porsche build because I used to be a really big fan of Reiju back in the days.
Yeah.
And, yeah, but I think the problem now with Porsche is that it doesn't really give you a better matchup than the control build would do. And I think the Senior Pink build can really solve any deck that wants to kind of counter you, but they really don't, because you have basically answers for everything. I think with the control build, we basically solved the only issue that Enel had, that was like kind of late game, that some decks would be better than Enel. And now with this, like, you can kind of solve any issue. Because having access to Gamma Knife plus Eltor, like Mama Ragon, at all times, consistently. Because basically, Pink is like a trump card that can become like any of the events. And Enel is basically based on like combos. And solving the combo with Pink is always like insane, because you can develop a body, do your combo, remove their body. Like, it's just too strong. And probably in this meta is kind of mandatory because of the way the other decks developed. Because most decks right now, they're just like, I develop one big guy that is very resilient, and then like I just pass. And then Enel, what can do is like, I also develop a guy that technically is not big, but it's gonna become big because of my leader effect. So Pink is technically at 10,000. And then I also remove your guy for free. So, because like, you just draw the extra card with Pink, and then you use Mama Ragon or Eltor, and like you don't use any resource basically. So it's I don't know. When I discovered it, I was like, this card is insane. I need to play it. At some point, we were like, even if we like, I don't know, do shit at the regional, we need to play this card because it's just too. It's too nice. I don't know.
It's really good.
At some point, we're like, yeah, we really wanted to play it. I was at 4 copies in the beginning. I bought like 20 alts the day that I discovered it, and then it was like €3 each, and I ordered every copy that was on card markets, and then in the end we had the confirmation that was good because I discovered that also like other very good players from Europe, they were playing it and we didn't even speak. So I was like, okay, they're on it as well. And then I saw also the US guys were on it. So I was like, okay, everybody's going to play this card. It's just too good.
Yeah. It was funny. The day before I heard about this, I was going through. So obviously, I pay very close attention to everything Asia's done. And I was going through my bulk, pulling out rares and stuff because I was looking for just pretty much every good purple card. And I pulled out my pinks, and then I was seeing it, and then everybody was talking about it. I was like, I'm really glad I pulled those out when I did because now I don't have to go back through and look for them. And I think the biggest power that Senior Pink has is he solves the biggest problem is you have one piece of the combo and he gives you the other piece. So if you've used it before, he fetches it back. And that's the real strength. He's almost like a custom searcher that gives you exactly what you want. And then he's also card neutral because he's giving you a card. And then you get the extra Dawn back, and he facilitates the -1 that you need to be able to maximize your leader ability. So he literally is the perfect storm of everything that you want to see. And then again, if you only see one Mama Ragan for the game, Pink allows you to see potentially 2 to 3 by being your 5th and 6th copy. Same with Gamma Knife. He is your 4th and 5th copy, or even Lightning Dragon. I've used Senior Pink to grab back Lightning Dragons and just keep freezing cards against Nami because there's just so many different uses you can use him for. He's literally any spell in your deck that you want on demand, which just feels incredible in the moment because it allows you to go beyond your typical 4. You can potentially play a card 6 times with Senior Pink, which is absurd.
I agree.
Cool. And then, so let's go ahead and jump on into the tech. So, of course, there are a lot of different and good purple cards. I want to really get your thoughts and kind of talk about some of the best ones. So this one, some of these are a little outdated here, but they have been played and are worth the mention. So of course, I think the biggest card everyone's talked about is Frankie. Frankie has made his way in and out of lists, still kind of bounces around because Reiju is such a strong card, but Frankie lets you see more cards. Frankie is Dawn -2. You trash a card, then you draw 2, plus being a blocker. So he can, in late game, take an attack. He'll probably take an attack because you're going to turn him sideways for a 9, and just so many different things. But the biggest thing is he allows you to draw cards, see your pieces. He's card neutral, so you had mentioned earlier, if they Mama Ragan and remove him, you didn't lose any cards, and he ate your opponent's resources and their removable cards because they have to deal with it. So really want to know, I think that's the best tech card out there and probably in this list, but want to know your thoughts on Frankie.
So Frankie was a bit of a love and hate back in the days because when I first tried it, I was not a fan of it. And now I'm like the biggest fan of this card. I think in the control version, the card is just insane. With the dog build, there is not much space for it. So I felt like it was kind of more situational. But I think the more you play the deck with a control style, the more you'll like this card. And he helps a lot also against like the bad matchups being like the blue-yellow Nami. And I mean, I don't consider Bell Luffy as a bad matchup, but like it's kind of even. So this card is not bad against that one as well. And he's also very good in a mirror match because the way the deck develops is now like a very, like who is the greediest Enel between the two. and
Yeah.
this card gives you a lot of value. So I think that's the biggest part of it, because he is basically free, and he also cycles your hand, so you get closer to the cards you need, you cycle away the cards you don't need, and it's just insane. I really like it. I was trying 4. I now play 3. I think it's fine playing 2 as well. I think between 2 and 3 is fine. But it's also a very good card to play on turn 2 instead of the Reiju, because at least if they kill it in some way, it's going to be fine. While the Reiju, if you play her on curve, they might just kill it since she's still a 5. But the Frankie, if they kill it, you don't care. So yeah, big fan of Frankie.
Got it. And so I added this in just because I think this card was, at the time, not bad. It's a 4. I think in a lot of the ways the decks can play 4s easily as well. Miss All Sunday lets you KO 3 cost or less, which KOs the dog. A lot of people are off the dog, but it does allow you a control piece based off of cost. Not many decks also play 3s. We're really the only one, just because 3 costs as a whole have been less performative, because a lot of them will be 3/5s, and that's just not a great stat, except for an Enel where you can only go to 6, so 3 costs matter. All that being said, I included this card because, one, it also has a trigger so you can play it. Have you ever considered playing this card? Is really what I want to know. Would you consider it?
I was not on this card. I saw it just recently. I think, like you just said, like with the new builds, probably it's not going to be as good anymore. But actually, on the other end, I was on another similar card. There was the Baby 5
Yep.
that destroys 3 costs. When we used to play the Porsche build, I think that was a really interesting tech choice. I like the fact that this card is triggered, but like, yeah, I don't know, it's quite random. But
It is.
she's really interesting. I think right now, the way the deck is played, I don't think you will need this card, especially in the mirror match. And outside the mirror match, I don't think there are so many 3 costs that we want to kill, really. So I think it's an interest. Like, this is a good representation of like any generic purple card that they could print that is like 6 cost or less might just break Enel. So I think it's gonna be very dangerous for Bandai printing purple cards as long as Enel is in the game. And my concern is that at some point they will just say, okay, this leader needs to go away, like they just did for RP Law. I was also a big fan of RP Law, and he was too strong back in the days. And I think Enel is gonna have the same destiny, probably. It's just too generic, too abusable with the mechanic. But yeah, this card, I think it's a good representation of what it could be.
Got it. And then, so the Sanji Pudding Goat, also, it was slightly teched in at a number of points. It's not a bad card. Gum Gum Lightning. It is crazy how purple removal cards are still better than red removal cards. But for 2 Dawn, you Dawn -2, KO a 6k or less, and then trigger's not really relevant, but some builds were playing it, and then they would go second and not play any bodies, and then they just played a bunch of triggers, and then they would just hope to take the first life, trigger one of these, and they can play a Enel on turn 2, and you just can't lose after you Enel on turn 2. So I want to know, did you try Gum Gum Lightning? And of course, it's really made its way out, but really want to know your thoughts on this card as a whole within Enel.
Actually, this card was one of the main reasons why I was trying Senior Pink back in the first days of testing. I think I was playing like 2 in my deck list back in the days. I think the first version of the guide had my prime list, and then I just updated everything. But like, I think this card is fine. A lot of people ask me about this card. I think the card is fine, but she's not solving any of the problems that Gamma Knife wouldn't solve already. So I think right now this could be a one-off, because we could say, okay, if we see it, we send it on trash, and then we can just get it back with Senior Pink at any point. But I would see it more in a heavy Senior Pink based list. I'm not a big fan of it right now, just because I think Gamma Knife is basically better in every spot in this meta. Maybe in the future, if there's gonna be a meta where like they play, I don't know, a 6,000 that we really need to kill ASAP, then probably it's gonna make her way into the deck. But in that scenario, I would say, okay, we can just -1 and Mamaragan anyway. So I think the card right now is not solving any of the issues that Gamma Knife couldn't solve.
Got it. And then, so finally, it's of course Gadatsu. A lot of people speculate this for the mirror because if they go into this body, they have to lose one of theirs, in theory, or you have to allocate Dawn or Elthor. You have to do something to change your power dynamic. What are your thoughts on this? I think it's fine. If you play all Enel, I think this is really, it's solid, but there's a lot of instances where it doesn't matter, but it helps you out, I feel, when you're behind on the one-cost war.
I think Gadatsu is fine. I talked about it in the guide as well. I think he's for sure a good card, but like, I don't know, it's just much worse in any other matchup that is not the mirror match. So for now, I'm just preferring all the other vassals and pudding. And if we really shift towards like a tier 0 NL meta, we might see play for this, even a 4-off. But right now, I think it's very tough to see like a complete NL based meta, because just the way that One Piece is, I think if it's one of the very few games where like people, they just play whatever they like instead of like the best deck technically. So I think right now we are still struggling with the slots. I had to get Sadori, for example, that I'm like a big fan of, and if I had to make space for like 1-drops, I will put Sadori over this at the moment. If of course we shift to a meta where like you face 9 NL out of 10 rounds, maybe I will play this. But outside that, no.
Got it. Okay. I think that makes sense. And then to kind of wrap things up, so these are some, obviously, some of these less text than more, but all these have seen play to some degree. So one of the cards that I personally love, and I really want to play in this, I think it's also just because I loved Rosinante as a deck as a whole. But this card, again, on the Frankie argument, a lot of people replace the blocker with Rosinante and Law because it is a card neutral play. However, it has no value in the mirror, which is the biggest downside of this card. It's only a 6/8, so it's not a 6/10, but it gives you and replaces itself, which is huge. It, of course, Gamma Knife L4 also works to remove it pretty easily, but again, your opponent's giving you 2 cards out of their hand while you lost 0 establishing it. I want to know, did you try Rosinante Law? And if so, why not play it?
I tried it a little bit. I also talk about this card in the guide. I think he is nice on paper, but the problem is that he's too expensive, in my opinion, Dawn-wise. So since I still have like problems with slots in the deck, and I'm debating if I want to play more Enels, I don't think I have space for this guy. I don't think the card is bad per se, but I don't know. I feel like it's I don't know. It's not better than the cards that I'm not finding space for.
I see.
So I'm also a big fan of the character, but sadly there is no space for him. Because I was also playing a lot of UP Sanji, and it was also a discussion going on in that deck for this card, and I decided not to play it, and yeah, in the end was basically the same.
Okay.
So,
since we went there, I'll edit it in right here. So I'm sure maybe you haven't, but Rick Master Flash, I think he won, but he topped the Chinoy's Cup with playing 3-cost Sanji. Yes, and since you mentioned UP Sanji, let's talk about it. So I think that's a lot of questions around that. Have you tried it? Like, I understand the concept of it. It is a very strong body. It also can't be removed, so it's really good in the mirror in theory. Of course, you have to play it later when it's thick, because otherwise they'll just Mamaragon. But I want to know, one, obviously, have you considered it? I'm sure you've seen it. And then, How do you feel about it?
I don't think it's terrible, but yeah, I think it's the same principle. There are cards that are just better. The deck has no space. I think if the Sanji would have been counter, I would have considered it more. But I feel like most of the times Reiju does the same job basically, because it's very tough to get to like 15 events. And yeah, I would say that role is already fulfilled by Reiju in a better way. And yeah, I think there is no need to play more than the 4 Reijus. And if I really had to like aggro my opponent, then I'd rather play the dog, because in the end, like they're both gonna be a dead draw in the late game, but at least the dog is a counter. So sadly, there is not enough. The deck is not fast enough to feel the trash so much, while Sanji was much better at doing so.
Got it.
So if we could make him a 9K, I would have considered it for sure. But
Makes
it's very
sense.
tough.
And then, okay, that checks out. And so then we have Law, right? Law was a lot better when we play a super aggressive build. And in an aggressive build, of course, your opponent takes a lot of damage, takes a lot of cards. And when you're playing Dog, because sometimes they'll just take a bunch of cards, then you just play a Law and rip their stuff. And then you still can Gamma Knife and potentially remove bodies as well and just obliterate them. Do you think that we're not playing the Law right now because we're on the control build? And if we were to go back to an aggro package, do you think Law has a home there?
I tried this card a lot because I thought it would have been a solution to the Nami matchup, like to make it easier. And he's not as dead as the dog in the late game because he's a blocker. But I don't think we have space for like 4 copies, so I tried 2. And every time I had a chance to play it, I also had Reiju and Frankie in my hands, and he was always like the third choice. So I think it's not good enough because like it's often better to establish a bigger body or to just have value in your hand instead of just discarding cards from your opponents. I think he's really good in the mirror match, but that doesn't compensate for the other matchups, because in like most matchups he's not good enough, because while Frankie is solving some of the issues of the deck, we don't really have an issue with like card advantage from our opponent as long as we can control the board, and he doesn't help us like finding solutions. So on paper he's really good, and in the mirror match he is really good, but I think outside of that he's not good enough for the other matchups. So yeah, I'm a fan of Law, but I don't know, he didn't give me good vibes when I played it.
Got it. Do you need to queue up?
Yeah, I'm already in the queue. We can speak as
Okay.
No.
Okay, and then so we've got Divine Departure and Vari. Both of these, I'm gonna call them tech cards just because the amount of space in the deck for them fluctuates a lot. And we've talked Divine Departure, right? A lot of people, again, early on, we were playing 3 to 4, and early Asia was playing 3 to 4 because it was so crucial in the mirror and just great for removing anything. And you can literally remove anything in the game outside of Roger, and you still can do that with Mama Ragon. But everything else becomes pretty much Elthor with Divine Departure and Keaton. And then you have Vari, which of course allows you, it's the anti-green and the anti-yellow counter. So it allows you to buff the cost of your characters, and in any other scenario, it's just free cycle. So it's the easiest card in your hand to cycle. How do you feel, obviously, about both of these? Because some people don't play Vari, and then I'm sure if Nami ever phases out, we won't play it until green rises back up again. Interested, of course, both your thoughts. How are you slotting these right now? Since I think they both have to be played just because of the amount of blue-yellow Nami, and it drastically helps our matchup. And then, of course, Divine Departure as well. How are you slotting these, and how do you decide if these cards are going to make the list?
I'm a big fan of both. So first of all, Vari, I just think this card is interchangeable with the 2K Sanji, but I'm not a fan of Sanji just because it has the same problem as the dog. Like, it's a card that you're gonna draw and you're gonna say, okay, this card doesn't do anything. And the argument behind Sanji is like, okay, I'm gonna have a 2K for when my opponent is gonna decide to swing, for example, 7-on-6 on the pink or like 8-on-7 on the Reiju, and then you say, okay, I can just 2K because otherwise you cannot save those bodies. But to be honest, I think the problem is that maybe you're not gonna have that card for that time, and it doesn't like justify me playing it in the build because he's gonna be a dead card most of the times, and opening him in the first hand is gonna cost me a lot because I'm gonna have a dead card for the most part of the game. So the main reason for me to play Vampyr is just that it's an event that I can cycle without thinking about it most of the times. And it can also help me to develop an early Reiju against the Nami. I don't think you need to play 4. I think you can play between 2 and 3. But I wouldn't play both Sanji and the Vampyr. So you have to make a choice there. It can help you a lot because if you play the Reiju on turn 2 against Nami and then you buff it with Vampyr, they cannot kill it with Zeus. So I think that's one of the main reasons why I like it. And it's just a free cycle. For the people coming from Yu-Gi-Oh! It's just an upstart goblin for me.
Upstart Goblin's crazy.
Yeah. So, of course, the +2 is a very nice thing to have, like you just said. But yeah, rarely I say, okay, I'm going to rely on this card to win this matchup. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, I'm going to hold my Vampyr in my hand the whole game to try and win at the end by buffing my character. I don't know. It's just a cycle for me at the moment. On the other hand, Divine Departure, like we just said before, I would love to play 1, but I think there are way too many new gates in the meta to play 1. The problem is that even if you play 1 and you say, okay, I'm going to need to remove only 1 new gate, you never know if you're going to send 1 on bottom or like it's going to be in your life or like you're never going to see it. So I really need to play 2 because 1, if I see 1 and I say, okay, this I can just throw away because I have a second one, at least I have the option to like decide to not grab it as soon as I see it. And I think one of the main issues of the deck is like also the scenario that you showed me before. In that spot, if you don't have Divine Departure, it's going to be pain because that new gate is just going to snowball. And that's a problem. So that's the main reason why I think 2 is fine. I wouldn't play more than 2. Like you said before, like we were on 4 at the beginning, then we went to 3 and now to 2 and now to 1. And I think it's fine to play 1 if you don't expect any new gates. But if you do, then I think you are forced to play at least 2. And yeah, I don't think the card has really any downside. Even though it's another brick that you don't want to open in the opening hand is like something that you need to play because you need to have at least one answer for like those late game big boss monsters. Like in the worst case scenario, you can also remove threats that you could remove with Gamma Knife. But I think the card is very good itself. But yeah, I would always play 2.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And again, yeah, we'll talk about it because up next is the matchups, and we'll talk a bit more because Nami, we've mentioned it a number of times, has increased their count too, and it's so crucial. So I really like Divine Departure. It also, again, it solves some of the bricks. Senior Pink's another brick. We kind of add a couple more. Frankie, if you're playing it, does help filter those a little bit. And of course, ideally you're playing your pinks, but when you are pulling life, those bricks matter. All the Enels are bricks, so the more Enels you play, the more bricks you play. And of course, Vari has a bunch of unique instances against yellow specifically and green, which are hugely advantageous. And then again, like you said, it's pretty much upstart Goblin. You get to draw 1 card for free in every other matchup. And it's a 2K. So it's a 2K that can also, on some occasions, draw you 1 card. And moving on to matchups, we're going to jump in. So we have a whole section to talk about the mirrors. So we'll talk just briefly here on that, and we'll cover just these pretty high level. I have a couple questions that I would like to ask you as well. But to kind of kick things off, of course, every matchup is 50-50. You either win or you lose. So it's a 50% chance you win, 50% chance you lose. Not actually, but so of course Enel, it is a 50-50 because you're either gonna like Enel's winning 50% of the time and Enel's losing the other 50% of the time. So The priority, of course, you want to go first. The biggest thing when, and again, we'll talk more about it, is when you go first, your role is really to try to establish the Enels, your 6 costs, and you have that priority to do so. Of course, with the same regard, you should remove your opponent's bodies. Goal to be to stick one. Once you stick one Enel, you can really snowball. Same with the mirror in general. If you stick one body at all, you can have the opportunity to snowball. Of course, your 6 cost Enel being the stickiest, but every body that stays is a body that swings and allows you to really sway the game, especially if you're not keeping a body or your opponent's not keeping a body. Whoever's not keeping a body, then whoever gets to stick one, that can be the game deciding factor, because you still want to continue to remove your opponent's bodies in the way that we're playing it now in the Sakazuki Lucci build. But of course, when going second, your goal is to be reactive to whatever your opponent does, making sure you're contesting their 1-drops. You want to try to wipe the board if possible every single turn and hope that one of your bodies sticks. Interested, of course, to hear just really brief high level, because we'll talk more about it on after this and dive into the nuances of the mirror. But generally, what is your mirror strat?
Yeah, of course, what you just said is correct. Like, who's gonna stick the first big body is gonna have an edge. That's why going first is so relevant in this matchup. Like I also mentioned before, I think it's a resource-based matchup, and like who can make the most value out of their resources is gonna win. So it's basically a war of like removals together with like establishing threats, and that is all mixed with like if you can actually put a clock on your opponent or not. So sometimes it's kind of like a mix of everything. I think it's a very fundamental based matchup where like the player with the best fundamentals is gonna win most of the times. If you're going first, you're gonna have like less responsibility on this probably. But yeah, I think the secret is like always try to clear your opponent's board without losing too many resources. Common mistake that I see is like wasting too many L-Tors without ever like clearing the whole board, or like sometimes swinging too many times face instead of trading the board, or like sometimes going too much on the 1-drops without ever clearing all of them, or like not understanding when you need to actually pivot into like aggro mode and try to win the game with that. It's in some senses is like quite similar to the Rayleigh mirror match back in the days.
Yep.
But like if you would drop to 0, you would just lose the game. And since like there is no blocker that in the mirror match can actually survive and block, it's very dangerous to drop to 0. So overall, I think who's going first is favored just because they have like always that one single turn where they can actually develop a body before your opponent is going to develop any meaningful threats. Going second, you can always develop a 4-cost on turn 2, but they can do the same even going first. So in the end, it doesn't really matter. I think most of the times the game is decided by like either one of the two develops an Enel and it just sticks and they play a second one, or whomever has the most 1-drops. I think those are the key factors. And yeah, of course, life management is important, because even if you like, let's say they stick an Enel, you just answer with Enel because you don't have a removal. Then they just play a second Enel, they aggro face, and then now you're screwed. But also not exposing Enels when they have an Enel themselves is important, because not allowing them to like trade with attacks is very important. But at the same time, you need to be careful of your life left. Probably if you have a mirror match of like no Decklist, it's gonna look more like a Lucci mirror match. If you both play the dog, or like one of the two plays the dog, he could try to aggro you down, but probably he's gonna have less edge if you control the board at least for one turn. Like once you clear once, you're gonna have an edge probably. But you need to be careful with life management. I tend to play around 2 to 3 life.
Yeah,
For the most part.
That checks out. Yep. And then we'll go ahead and so talk about Nami. I think this is absolutely our worst matchup, and it's the reason that this deck is so popular. Of course, our whole deck being a Perona target. That's why we've added in the Reiju. So we have it at about 45, 55. I think that only holds true for the Reiju Vari build because that is optimized for this, and even then we still have a slight disadvantage in this matchup. So one of the biggest things when it comes to this, and I think this is also the biggest mistake a lot of people make as well. A lot of people like to go, we'll poke 5 at Nami, turn on the ability, then swing 7. When if you swing 7 and they use the ability, they're still giving you 2 cards. So if you swing 5, 7, it's the same thing as you just swinging 7. You get the same amount of cards. However, if you start off with a 7 swing, then if they take it, then you get to get a card for free by swinging with your leader and forcing or swinging just a 5 to force their ability to turn on. But a lot of people swing inefficiently at Nami, which is one of the problems, right? But the biggest thing is a lot of what we want to do, especially with our little bodies, we want to poke and demand cards. Nami becomes a 7k, which makes poking a lot harder, and you have to big swing into her. That is why the 6-cost Enels are so important. And we talked earlier with the deck list about the body count because you need to see those to win this matchup. I had the most winnable Nami game, and I lost solely because I didn't see a 6-cost body. If I saw a 6-cost body at all, it was the most winnable. But because of the disadvantage you get from the 7k leader, it invalidates all of your little bodies and the value that they bring for the most part. There are combos with Elthor and things like that, but the biggest thing is, 1, they can stop any of our swings with a Perona. 2, they're 7k leader effectively. So anytime that we go to do anything to them, like they just give us a card, then we can't poke. We can't command cards. It's very expensive. We either have to demand big cards or we have to hit them very hard, or we have to have a really good board. Like Reiju's, again, help solve this problem, but the biggest issue is that, and then they have infinite heal and they stop attacks. So they're 7k and they stall. They have Borsalino. They'll play 10 costs or 8 cost Gecko, and then they'll spit in a Kumasi and they're just going to trigger Perona on you. And so many different things that make this matchup unfun for us. It's a lot easier when we go first, right? Because going first, we get to establish the 6 cost first. We get to establish it a turn early, and then we have opportunities to do removal as well. On the removal topic, their bodies punish us for removing. If they start playing like 8 cost Gecko's the best body to remove because Robin costs, Nami can spit out something else. Everything punishes you for removal as well. So it's really just the anti-Enel deck, but we'll pass it over to you, kind of talk about your approach to the matchup and just all the nuances that Nami is.
Yeah, I think it's a very tough matchup because it's quite, let's say, unusual how you should play it compared like to the other matchups. After the latest testings, I've been finding some patterns to like beat this matchup. I think it's probably one of the very few matchups that is quite patternized. And I think what you just said, like starting with a 7 and then going with a 5, is most of the times a nice combination. Because of course, like most people, I would say like one of the biggest mistakes that I see, or like one of the most common ones, at least in coaching, is that they always start with a 5 and they say, okay, at least I get a card. I think starting with a 5 gives them the possibility to like discard something that they could trigger off the trash, like any Thriller Bark, for example. And especially starting with like 7 or 10, it's usually better, because if they trigger a Thriller Bark, then like, for example, if you have an Enel on board and you start with a 10, like if they trigger Perona, it doesn't matter because you already swung. So that's actually better. And I always like to keep my leader for like the possibility to swing at any 5k body. Like, for example, if they trigger a Perona, I can always go on the Perona, or like minus it and go like 6 on 4, for example. The general approach, I think, I rely a lot on the Reijus because they save me a lot of cards, especially in defense, because when I develop the Reiju, I can also like go 7 phase with my leader, and then recycle the dons, and then reassign to a 1-drop and then swing 7 with the 1-drop. So I keep poking them while I develop bodies that are like very annoying for them because they basically deny most of their swings. I think Nami goes a lot with like 6s, and having a Rage on board that saves you a lot of cards. And at any point into the game, you can also turn the Rage to inflict damage. So I think she's the core of the new strategy. Seeing multiples is of course better because then you can always turn one of them. And I think the other key is to like always have an answer for like very annoying pieces that you cannot really remove, like the 5-cost Nami. Freezing her like until the end of the game is usually the way to win if they play it on curve. And that's why also, like you just said a couple minutes ago, like the Senior Pink can get you back like a Lightning Dragon that then you can reuse to freeze cards like that. I think still the matchup is a lot dependent on like which triggers they get. But I think
As
the most
yellow
important
is.
thing, yes, of course. But I think it really depends on like in which spot of the game they actually trigger it. Because sometimes even if they trigger 6 times, if you still have swings when they trigger, then it's fine. But some other times maybe they trigger something on the last swing, and then like they have an extra piece and they're gonna ask for an extra card, and like it's very annoying sometimes. And like you have a lot of punishing triggers, like Kikunojo most of the times. The 8-cost Moria, I still don't know why this card has trigger.
Just play
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, it's not locked to the thriller, but that's the thing that I don't understand. Like the trigger Zoro get back alive, and then it's just Quasar Borsellino.
I
It's
just
the
had
same
that
thing.
happen to me in a game. Guy said he'd
Yeah,
been
it's
waiting for it
terrible.
all day. I was like, I bet you have. I was like, I'm gonna go cry now.
Oh, it's crazy. But yeah, I think the more we'll go into the meta, and the easier it will become for Enel. Because I think it's one of the very few matchups where like we can kind of patternize and make it similar to like the ACMU matchup, I would say. Like you always do the same things. So it doesn't matter which trigger they do, like your game plan is going to be the same. And like you said, like if you see a 6-cost, like if you see an NL in the first part of the game, then it's going to be much easier because you're always going to have an extra swing basically. And then you can just apply your Raiju plan. But I think it's always difficult to understand if you need to develop a 4-cost or a 6-cost. But most games that I win, like all the Nami games that I win, I always develop only one NL, no more than one, unless they like, I don't know, they just sleep and let me do it. Yeah. Usually Raiju is the key.
Yeah. So I do have a few. So obviously you're on the no dog build. So kind of a combo question here. I loved Holly the most solely because for me, obviously if the dog stuck, it was so good. But on top of that, if they played Zeus, it was like I got a free rusher because they're giving up a 2K from their hand and they're giving up a life. Of course, it replaces itself, and then you have the opportunity to take a life without them drawing an extra card, which is also very nice. But I always enjoy that they would go down 1 life just because I played down Holly, and if not, I get to jam them 9 double attack, and then they go down 2 life. So it felt like a super win-win for me. It was always one of my favorite ways. So what changes in the approach when you're playing the no dog build?
Mm-hmm. So the main difference is that with the dog you basically have a faster game, so you will need to answer less threats from Nami, and the dog kind of carries you into the game because you can always swing 9 every turn. If you don't have the dog, you will need to be a bit more grindy. You will need to be a bit healthier because being healthier means that you can also answer the Robins without being too low on health. Usually what I tend to do is like before they play their Robin, I tend to be at 3 life. And then by killing the Robin, I go down to 2. So I still have room to kill a second one. And then after that, like once I drop to 1, I usually have like 2 turns to win the game. The main difference is just you need to rely a lot on Raiju to delay the game for a bit longer. And you always swing with the 1-drop 7. So you keep like a bit of pressure. So usually if you play with a lot of 4-drops, you can always go 7 with leader, 7 with the 1-drop. And then eventually if you develop the second blocker, you can also go 7 with the Reiju, or like, yeah, it really depends on the spot, but like usually you can do like triple swings. But usually you have like 2 7k swings thanks to the leader. That's why playing the 4-drop sometimes is better, because in the matchup against Nami, you don't need to play Gamma Knife so many times. So you will have time to invest those 2 dons early on. While usually once they drop the Robin and the Moria, then you just Gamma Knife those.
You just talked about so many things that I wanted to talk about all in one go, which is crazy. So one thing, obviously, to call out, the 7/7 is really good. Frankie makes that so much easier because Frankie will minus the Dawn off of your leader, which is heavily underrated because he's Dawn -2, and a lot of times you have to use spells to remove Dawn when attached to your leader to, of course, get it back. So Frankie allows you to play, and then you can minus it. So I love that. But you talked about popping Robin, and I know that's been a lot more popular. So one of the ways that I think about popping Robin is if I take that Robin hit to the dome anyways, I can pop it for free, and I just gave it the swing, but now I no longer have to deal with the body for the rest of the game. You mentioned you like to be healthy. When do you pop Robin, and when do you just have to leave it there? Like, how are you making that decision? I know you mentioned you want to be healthy, so let's assume you're healthy. I think it's fair, but let's say you're at 2. Is there ever the reason to not pop it? Are we just establishing blockers that kind of try to deal with that?
I think in general, you always want to clear any threat they play if you can. If you cannot, it means you're putting a clock on yourself, basically. So, like, let's say they play Moria and you cannot clear it, then you can play like a Frankie, for example, to delay it 1 turn, but then it means like your game needs to end in like 2-3 turns on average. If they manage to stick like 2 big bodies, then your game is gonna end very soon, because then they can push you too much. Because the problem of them having big bodies on board means that they can play super defense. So, for example, they can go Borsalino and like something else, or like they can just play I don't know. Yeah, usually it's just Borsalino and stuff. Like they can just heal and protect themselves, because they don't need to establish something to actually put the pressure on you. Because most part of the game you just clear the whole board, so they're not gonna have anything to threat you with. And if you actually fail to remove something, then at that point they will just say, okay, I already have my board, I just need to protect myself while I just assign dons and I just go face and try to kill you. Because at that point you will be like at around 2 life most of the times. So yeah, that's it. That's usually the plan. Like if you fail to remove something, pivot into aggro mode, try to win the game in maximum 3 turns, I would say.
Got it.
But yeah, as long as you can go, like also in the scenario that we saw before, as long as you can control, you can do it. Because once they start having very few cards, then it's going to be difficult for them to come back.
Okay, that makes sense. And so a couple more just to kind of round it off. And again, everyone, Henrico has a guide out there that you guys, if you want more matchup information, there's a lot more there. We're only covering really, again, high level these 2, and then we'll talk a lot more about the mirror. So I want to get us there. I know Nami is the hardest matchup though, so of course I want to know 2 things. Do you typically swing the Reiju, or how often do you leave Reiju standing? And then for Okikus, is there ever an instance where you can test them, especially if they've been triggered and it's adding more pressure?
So the Reiju you can swing if they're not threatening big swings on you. Like for example, if they have like 2 swings, I usually don't turn it. If they only have leader swing and I'm low on cards, I don't swing with it. If I have like 2 Reijus, most of the times one of them swings. So like usually most part of the game, if I have 1 Reiju only, I'm gonna keep it as a blocker because she saves me so many cards. And then for the Kiku, I never trade it. It's like the Nami and the Kiku, I always leave them there. The Nami, I only trade if they put a life with Moria, and then I just go on it if I can play the control game still. But yeah, just in general, I would say 2 Rages, you can turn 1 Raju. Most of the times you will just block. Unless
Got
you're
it.
going for lead.
Makes sense. Okay. And then, so we'll move on. Lucy's a slightly, and you might feel differently, slightly favored matchup for Enel as a whole, mostly because a lot of their bodies are very easy to remove. They typically only play 9Ks, and all 9Ks are susceptible to Gamma Knife Momoragon or Gamma Knife Keaton L4. So you can remove them quite easily. And Divine Departure also. Divine Departure is going to hit all of it. Hits all the sweet spots against Lucy. And then you can also perma-freeze the Cavendish. So he's a perfect Cavendish target. Again, also can get hit with Keaton, Momoragon, and you just poke it. In the same manner that Enel doesn't play a lot of 2Ks, Lucy doesn't play a lot of 1Ks. So if you command cards from them, a lot of their cards are events that work for the leader. If they don't have stage, it's a lot easier to contest their bodies on board as well, which really helps make this matchup a bit better. Me, as an individual, I have cards specifically in my Lucy deck for Enel, and I think it really kind of balances it out. I also really like Roberto's build, where they're playing, because a lot of times as Enel, you won't turn your body sideways if you establish a 6, just because the fear of the flame, of the Fire Fist, and then people are playing more of the 7 cost now to draw 3 cards and do a double attack poke, which gives them aggression and cards when you didn't go aggro turning the Enel sideways. So of course want to know how you feel about turning the Enel sideways and your overall approach to the Lucy matchup. What are we looking for and how do we win?
So in general against Lucy, I think it's a nice matchup because their main win con is like the Sabos, and we can clear them very easily. For the Cavendish, I tend to kill them. Like a lot of people like to freeze Cavendish, but I like to kill it as soon as possible. And especially in the early game, since I know, like if I can establish an early arm, for example, like I have Kittens in my hand, I tend to like develop a big body first and then try to kill the Cavendish as soon as possible. I also tend to use like more resources for that. I almost never use Gamma Knife for it. I try to kill it with like Kitten and Mamaragans most of the times. And then I just wait until they play the first Sabo to go off with the Gamma Knives. I think the best approach against Lucy is to have patience. There is no need to aggro. I think the most common mistake that I see also in coaching is like people try to aggro them down with the new lists. When we used to play the Borscht build, I think that would be a good approach.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's not the case anymore. You should just control. And I never turn my Enels unless they're setting up a lethal, or like I have a lot on my board. Or if they don't have a board and I'm like, for example, I'm doing a turn where I do Gamma Knife on like Sabo, play Frankie, and then they don't have any 2K on board, and they only have leader swing basically, then I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna turn it, because even if they go 8-on-2, I'm just gonna block with my Frankie and yeah, let it go, and that's fine. So usually the approach is like, don't be aggressive. You're not in a rush. They're not very aggressive deck anyways. I played a lot of games against Roberto as well, and I think he's smart that he plays a lot of the double attack events, because they allow you to actually try and put a clock on Enel. But yeah, on the other hand, I don't think it's a difficult matchup. I think people just forgot how to play it because I don't know, they try to aggro a lot and they're in a rush for some way. I also tend to take a lot of damage against Lucy. I usually go to like 3 life most of the times, and then depending on the board, I decide to counter, because then I play with like all the resources in my hands.
Mm-hmm.
Because as long as you fully clear the board, even if they have Roger, they cannot really win the game. So I think usually that's the best approach. But yeah, I think the best thing to do is like answer the early Cavendish, try to dig for as many combos to clear Sabos as possible. Turn the Enels only if you have already a big board, or like you're setting up lethal, basically. I think that's the main approach.
I think that checks out. It's honestly the most basic Enel strategy. Like Enel at its core is what you play against Lucy. There's no bells and whistles. It's I'm going to remove bodies and play Enels, and that's really how we're going to win. So that makes sense. Let's go ahead and jump into, I know this is the part that everybody really wants to know because there's a lot of nuances. I want to make sure we can talk about most of these. So, of course, in the mirror, there are a lot of cards that are very good. Of course, Mama Ragan being the #1 card to rest and contest their bodies, which ideally is going to be their 10 cost or their 6 cost Enel, and then Gamma Knife. Gamma Knife is the one card that allows you to Mama Ragan, the 6 cost Enel. So of course the biggest priority is who can if you can take the gamble and stick a 6 cost Enel, you are going to win because they'll never be able to answer that body or another body that you establish, and it really comes down to who can stick a body longer, and once you've stuck that body you can really start the snowball. So Mama Ragan and Gamma Knife allow you the best removal for your opponent's threat, while Charlotte Pudding or even any 1 cost, so this really counts for any 1 cost is what you really want to see, because there is early game and even late game there's the 1 cost war, which allows you to gain so much value and do a bunch of these pokes that get it, because you go at them, then they turn theirs into yours, and then you turn yours into theirs, and you go at them again and things like that. And so you slowly eat theirs while also commanding cards for free, and if they don't go after it, so they get a lot of value. Pudding allows you to find your pieces, though. Pudding was a big popular card for the mirror as a whole. People were playing it when it was a bunch of Enel format because you can find the Mama Ragan, you can find the Gamma Knife, you find the missing piece that you need to be able to remove the threats that are presented to you. Same thing with Senior Pink. Senior Pink allows you to fetch back any of your missing pieces. So if you've used it, it's really search your trash for 1 event is what this says. It's like search your trash for 1 event. And you get that back. So you can fetch anything, even if you've only seen 1 Mama Ragan and your opponent's seen 2. It allows you to, it's effectively additional copies of any card you want it to be. So he allows you to run additional copies, quote, of any card that you want, so long as you've used it during that game, which is a huge advantage to finding those pieces. Plus, he's a 6K body, so he can't just be hit by Mama Ragan. He's a 6K who can swing for 10, so he puts on a lot of pressure. So many things about just all the, quote, weak bodies are so strong because Enel gives them 4 Dawn. And then, of course, Enel is the key piece to sticking. You just need 1 big body to stick, and then that can be just your win con in and of itself. If your opponent can't match it or you can remove your opponent's threats, this card will carry you to victory. Of course, anything I might have missed here, please feel free to chime in, let people know like what are we ideally looking for just card wise when it comes to the mirror, because a lot of these can be considered outside of the 1. A lot of these are mid-game cards that you really want. So anything you want to add, if not, also good, and we can move on to talking about the matchup as a whole.
No, I think it's good. I think Senior Pink is one of the best because it allows you to chain back-to-back removals and that like always fulfill like the combos. Of course, Gamma Knife being one of the best removals. It's key. Enel, sometimes there are games where you don't really have space to play it, but I think it's still like one of the best cards in a mirror match. Mama Ragan, of course, is goated. Putting, I think any 1-drop is fine. I think Shura is one of the key cards in a mirror match.
It's crazy because people cut it. Like, Shura is so good. It lets you contest the 1. It helps you in the 1 cost war when you're behind, too. It is so good.
Yes, indeed. Can help you with bigger bodies. Like every 1-drop, I think it's very good in a way. And they all have like different purpose. But yeah, indeed, I think the key cards, like if you had to ask me today what is the best card in a mirror match, I would say probably Pink in combination with any events. Yeah, I think he's one of the best. But the more I play the mirror match, the more I see that like the 1-drops are like the core of every win at the end. So that's why I think Shura is making a huge comeback, because sometimes he helps you to clear threats, and it just becomes a war of like whomever has the more Shuras. So yeah, I think outside of that, these are for sure the key cards.
Awesome. Yep. And then we go on to here. So, of course, mirror match, heavily skill based. Of course, with anything, there is some fortune to it, right? If your opponent sees 4 Mamaragon and you only see 1, that's one of your key removal pieces. So, you can be slightly disadvantaged there, speaking from experience. And if they place in your pink, then it's 5 Mamaragon. So, when you go first in the mirror, of course, the biggest thing is you get the opportunity to play a 6-cost Enel first. When you play a 6-cost Enel first, your opponent is put on, you have to remove this, and they have to spend their cards to answer that. And if not, you're already up to a huge advantage. Then you have the opportunity to establish another one, because if they couldn't answer one, they can't answer a second one. And then you can kind of run away from that. Or whatever they do decide to play, you can just remove it, establish another body. And what one body is going to stick forever. So you get to be really proactive and really prioritize establishing. Passing it to you, Henrico, really want to know how you approach going first. Let's talk both with dog, because that's obviously the key turn 3 play, and then without dog. How does that really change?
Yeah. I think, of course, going first it's easier, I would say, because you have the chance to play that Enel on 6. But I think it's kind of a fake advantage, because you will see, especially in the new builds, a lot of games, the player going first won't develop an Enel on 6 because maybe they don't have it, because we don't play 8 or 7 anymore. Now we play like 5 or 4. So like it's not guaranteed that you're gonna have it. And in that case, the game like roles are gonna shift, like they're gonna swap, and like the going second might say, okay, now I'm gonna be the proactive by playing the 6 cost. So I think like whether you go first or second doesn't really change so much. It's just that the player going first is gonna have this opportunity to have an easier gameplay. Outside of that, I think the key, especially in the early game, is like you want to establish a lot of board, that being like 4 drops, 1 drops, the dog as well, like whatever you can play, you just play it on board, because the more drops you have, the better chances you're gonna have to like always have something to make use of, or like to maximize your leader effect, basically. And I think the early game is basically focused on that. I saw a lot of people with the new builds playing like Reiju on turn 2. I think I'd rather play a lot of 1 drops instead of that, because playing a Reiju on curve is very dangerous most of the times.
When going first, right? Because you can only play pudding if you are going first, or because you have to go to 3, then ramp up to 4, and then you also might not have the events to cycle, because you can only cycle 2, right? I know I kind of just jumped in, but yeah, continue.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, it doesn't really matter, because even if you don't have the pudding and you have a 1 drop, you could say, okay, I want to develop my Reiju on 2, because you will see a lot of times like people now they tend to not swing with the 1 drop, even though they have leader effects, and they can swing like for 6 on turn 2, because they don't wanna give away 1 drops for free. And a lot of times they wanna force like an El Tor. So you will see also, if you go back and you see, for example, the mirror match between Mirko and Jonas in Lille, it was top 8, I think. And they're both really good players. Like a lot of times they don't even swing, even if they have like a clear swing phase, they don't do it, because they were approaching the game into like full value, and inflicting that damage wouldn't change so much, especially when you don't establish an early dog. I think the dog gives you a possibility to start and put a lot of pressure on your opponent as soon as possible. But to be honest, like establishing a Frankie or a dog early game doesn't really change a lot. I think the dog allows you to go like to have a more resilient piece, just because he's 6,000 in defense, compared to like Reiju and the Frankie. But yeah, my approach is usually like going first, play a bunch of 1 drops on 6, play Enel maybe if I can. And then from there, I just try to control my opponent's board. Going second, to make a long story short, I tend to either I answer with an Enel to their Enel, and even if they swing with it, like I can just play my 4 drop, and gamma knife the Enel and just like basically level the board. I think the key in the mirror match is to have like enough resources to make sure that when you're gonna gamma knife the Enel, he has to die. So like Kitten, like Ohms, all these cards are usually like the best. You want to avoid using like Departure and lose a whole turn to just remove an Enel. But the more you play the mirror match, the more you will realize that like the more 1-drops you have on board, the better, because then you have better chances to always have something to clear whatever they're gonna play. Because if they play a Rage or they play a Frankie or they play a Senior Pink, as long as you always have a lot of 1-drops, even if they try and full clear your board, they cannot do it, basically. Because you always need to keep into account that they can always like Eltar 2 guys, Mamaragan the other one, swing on the rested one, and then you lost like 4 guys in 1 turn. And like any advantage that you might have on board can like disappear in 1 turn. Maybe they go double gamma knife and like you lose the whole board. And now you're back to square one. So that's why I think the most important thing is like, of course, board control, but without wasting a lot of resources. That's usually the most common mistake. Life management, don't go too low on life. You can play it too life most of the times. And then I think value, so hand size, like the more answers you have, the better. The more resources you can save, the better. Like to have like some future sight of like the game. If you say, okay, I'm gonna have an answer for like this, and that turn, the longer you can see ahead, the more chances you're gonna have. Because if you miss 1 turn of removal, that's gonna backfire quite easily. So it's important to always have an answer for that. So like you should always build your hand towards like, okay, I expect them to play like a 4-drop and remove my guy, or like how many Senior Pink do I expect, or like are they just gonna play Enels? I have a lot of footage of like people losing the board and then they say, okay, to come back I need to establish an Enel, and then they play like 4 Enels in a row. I remove all of them, they just lose the game. So that's quite common. But yeah, I would say full clear of the board without losing resources is usually your goal every turn. You don't care about life. And then if you cannot clear anymore, you're losing the board control war, you just go face and try to win.
Yeah, there's a lot there. There's so many things. I'm like, but of course, you have so much value to provide, so I want to make sure that you're able to say everything. So, obviously, again, life management is super important. Life management becomes even more crucial the moment that they stick a 6-cost Enel, because every single turn he's probably going to rip a life that he exists. So you're just going to have to eat that more than likely. So if that does come to it, of course, life management matters so much there, because once you're at 1, especially if they have the blocker, they can just go 11, 15. And then you have to have an answer for that, which is insane. Like the lethal with the blocker is just so strong. It's my favorite thing ever. But even with your events as well, of course, that's the rise of Frankie is a big part of that, is the resources, because you're spending cards to remove your opponent's cards, and then your opponent's spending cards to remove your cards. A lot of Enel's cards are net neutral, Mama Ragan, Keaton, and then the other one, Lightning Dragon. All these different resources, they all replace themselves, so you get to do things for free. It's the Gamma Knife and things like that that cost cards. Senior Pink makes up for the cost on Gamma Knife, because you're establishing a threat and minusing a body for 1 card. Then you Mama Rog on it, and you've only spent 1 card while establishing a threat. So you really just played a body for free, and then you paid for your Gamma Knife. So there's so many different things that really give you that edge, along with, again, the 1-cost bodies you talked about. They give you the ability to command cards for free. Every little poke, every attack that they eat, every single hit they absorb. It's just like Rayleigh. Every time that they go at your board, they're not going after you. And so you want to make your board as valuable as possible, which is what Rayleigh did. They would draw cards. Each card replaced itself, very similar to what Enel does. So, and then every time that they eat a swing, you just got a free 1K. So it replaced itself and it gave you a 1K. That's how you make good trades to be able to win. So my question is, in the mirror, obviously sometimes you're going to miss the removal and the game changes dramatically because that body's going to stick. How do you pivot? Because Enel is a deck that can play control, but also has the ability to turn on the aggro engine. What is your typical game plan when you miss curve? Or not miss curve, but when you miss removal?
Yeah, I just develop myself, and then I wait for them to answer. That's usually the plan. Usually, if you miss the removal, you want to develop something at least as good as what they developed, and kind of force them into removing your board. But yeah, usually I think the easiest way to like compensate for that is to be a bit healthier, because basically missing removals and just playing something means that they're gonna have free swings phase. So that's why life management is so important. But that's of course highly situational. It's very difficult to answer that question.
I know.
It
It's very situational. I know.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, usually you just answer with like more development, and then see if they have an answer for that.
Every Enel game is so situational because there's so many things you can do. So moving from that, right? I know you had mentioned earlier, and maybe this was going second, maybe it was going first as well. You mentioned if they play Enel, you usually just like to respond by playing your own Enel. Outside of that, how do you decide when you're going to play 6-cost Enel? I know it used to be the play when going first. On second you hit 6, you spit out the Enel, but you had mentioned a lot of players now aren't playing the 6-cost Enel and they're just establishing other bodies. Is it more wait for your opponent to burn their removal so that way you can play your Enel and it's more likely to stick? Or is it more of I need to present lethal on board? What instances do you find yourself playing 6-cost Enel now in the mirror, both going first and going second?
Usually, the only question you should ask yourself when you play an Enel is like, how bad is it if they actually remove it next turn?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if your opponent's board is not a big threat, like let's say they have a Reiju, for example, you could say, okay, if I play my Enel now, can I remove this Reiju as well? Yes or no? If I cannot, then if they answer with like 4-cost and like Gamma Knife, how bad it is. So that's usually like the question. Like the short answer is like you can play him when your opponent is not presenting a better board than you. So if you're getting ahead on board, basically. The long answer is like if you can survive a removal, then it's fine. But it also depends on like which backup play you have. If you say, okay, my backup play is like developing a 4-cost and like more 1-cost and being wider, then is it better than this? Or like how many resources they used, how many Gamma Knives they used. Yeah, that's usually, or like you could say, okay, if I play an L now and the Gamma Knife and I take damage, if I play another Nell in the next turn, how likely is it gonna be that they're gonna have another removal? I always try to avoid playing random NLs. I either play it early on or I just don't most of the times. I prefer to like play 4-cost and double 1-drop most of the times, and just wait for them to swing with their NL if they have one, and then just remove it with like any combination of removals. But yeah, I don't feel like if they have one NL, we are so much behind. As long as you keep developing stuff that it's annoying. Like if you had 2 Regius and they have an NL, I feel better than them, because an NL could die in very easily. While Reiju is a very annoying because you don't want a Gamma Knife, but you cannot either remove it with like cheap stuff. So it's kind of like that card in between. But yeah, I would say if you are even or head on board, you can play it. Otherwise, not really.
Got it. Okay. And then, so let me ask you this. Of course, we have removal, and Gamma Knife is the best card for that, for the minus for contesting the Enels, and that's the ideal target, really. When do you decide to use Gamma Knife? Obviously, Enel would be the priority, but if it's the only way that you have to remove a body, are you is the ideal scenario it being turned sideways? I know you mentioned about the Enel being turned sideways and then you'll go after it. When do you decide to use your gamma knives in the mirror, knowing that they're so crucial to removing the 6 cost Enel?
It usually depends on how many gamma knives can I get back. So like, if I use gamma knife now and they play Enel next turn, can I remove it again? Yes or no? If the answer is no, is it gonna be a problem if I cannot remove it? Yes or no? If then is yes, then I don't use it. So I just keep it as long as I know that like this card is like a bullet with a name on it. Like I cannot use it because I know I need to use it on card X. But if I have, for example, 2 gamma knife and I say, okay, if I use one now, I'm gonna be ahead. If they play an L next turn, I'm gonna kill it. If they play another Enel afterwards, it's gonna be a problem of the future me because I have senior pink, or like I'm gonna draw a lot of cards, or I'm just gonna leave it there and play an Enel myself. So like you should always plan ahead. If the gamma knife is like your last one and you know your opponent could play a bigger threat, then I tend to be conservative with it. But honestly, the only time that I use gamma knife, it's like on a Reiju outside of the Enel. Pink and like Frankie, of course, you never need to. So yeah, I would say it's always for Enel most of the times. And on the Reiju is like, I really need to be ahead after that gamma knife if I want to remove the Reiju.
Got it. Okay. And then, so obviously we kind of talked about this earlier in one of the scenarios, way earlier in the video. If you don't, what is the ideal game plan, right? We talked about if we don't see one cost, how we kind of take that approach. If you could just kind of reiterate what you do. So if you mulligan, your opening hand doesn't have 1 costs, and then what is your approach there? Also, 2 sides of the same coin here. What if you only see, so let's say you open 4 1 costs, which isn't uncommon because of how many we play, and it's not bad either because you mentioned you play like a Frankie and Establish, and each one of them cycles. But let's say you open 4 1 costs and like a Lightning Dragon, the least ideal event. How do you typically, when you see no bodies, all 1 costs, and then how do you operate when you don't see 1 cost? Like, what's the plan for both of those in the mirror when 1 costs are very valuable in that matchup? How do you play without them, and what do you do when you have nothing but those and you don't have the threats to back it up?
I don't think it's ever a problem to have a lot of 1-drops because you can always do like turns where you just play all of those. So that's usually not a problem. When you don't have them, what I usually do is like, probably you're gonna have like some body, like a 4 cost, for example. What I tend to do is like I just cycle away as many events as possible to find at least 1. And at some point you will just start drawing them back to back. I don't mind cycling any event in the mirror match. Probably the only one that I would keep as much as possible is the Mamaragan. But I tend to use it sometimes also as a counter. The Dragon, I don't care. I always cycle it as soon as possible. Kitten is very good, but like if your hand is trash, you won't need it anyways. So I would always cycle it. Vari is useless, so you always cycle it. So basically, like that's the main reason why I don't like cards like Holly and Sanji 2K and like all these situational cards, because they increase my chances to get stuck in these situations. But having like a very let's say cycle oriented list increases my chances to never find myself in this spot. But yeah, I would say whenever you don't have 1-drops, cycle to a reasonable extent to find them. That's usually the plan. And there is no event outside Mamaragan that you shouldn't cycle, in my opinion.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. And then, so that's pretty much the ideals for the mirror. If anyone has any questions, drop them in the comments below and I'll answer what I can as well. If there wasn't anything you guys want answered here, and I'll message Enrico and maybe he'll answer me. So We'll go ahead
Of course.
and you talked about cycling and then you should cycle. So let's talk a little bit about what do you cycle. So kind of brief and again very situational, but cycle priority, trying to figure out which cards you want to cycle first. We of course have Lightning Beast Kitten, Lightning Dragon, Mamaragan, and Vari. Each one of these are different events as a whole. Vari, of course, has no value outside of green or yellow, specifically Nami, but so any Thriller Bark deck, you have a lot of value there, but otherwise Vari's pretty much like you said earlier. Upstart Goblin just says draw one, so it's the most ideal. Lightning Dragon does not have counter. It is the only card of these events that doesn't have counter. In most instances, this is you should always, if you need counter, cycle this first so you can find it, right? Because this is the only one that's going to find you actual counter. And then, of course, your 1Ks can potentially draw you into other cards. But Lightning Dragon, you should always cycle when you need counter. Kitten has the most value outside of Mamaragan, so this is a higher value one. So you can cycle it. Some matchups, it doesn't matter as much also. So this is ideally, again, anything not mirror, you can cycle Vari, Lightning Dragon also. A lot of times in the mirror, you cycle this a lot too, just because late game you'll have like 2 to 3 and you just need counter, which happens a lot too. So you usually cycle these as you go. And then you have, again, Kitten. Kitten has some value because the removal aspect and then also working with Mamaragan. But taller decks, things like that, you can also cycle this. But this one has some value in holding in your hand. And then we already talked about it a number of times. Mamaragan is so good. It's also -2, so it's a lot more expensive to, quote, cycle. You usually want to use this for when you're going for a lethal. You can use it for extra minus so you can reuse Dawn when allocated and things like that. And when you're desperate and you need other cards, because it's a great counter card. It's draw one and it's card neutral on counter. So this card does everything. But any thoughts as to like how you decide which cards you're going to cycle and when?
That's a quite common question, actually. So I'm just going to give the same answer that I always make. So of course, it depends on the matchup, but like the general approach is how useful is this event in this matchup? And that it's very simple because like for me, the dragon is basically only useful in matchups where like I know there are pieces I cannot kill. So especially the yellow decks, like Bad Luffy and Nami. In any other matchup is a nice to have card, but I always cycle it a lot because I know that I always want to clear the board and not just delay it most of the times. And that's also a common mistake from people. Like they tend to delay too much instead of focusing on clearing everything. So I think Dragon is, of course, one of the best to cycle away because it's not a 2K. Vari is the same principle. Actually, I cycle it away also in the matchups where it's good, unless I draw it in like a very late part of the game, especially against the greens. Sometimes it's nice to have one in my hands, but I tend to cycle these ace up basically in most matchups, and that's the main reason why I play it. The Kitten, I think it's based on like if you see or not, since he can basically do the same most of the times. And in a lot of matchups, like your opponent is not allowed to go on the most of the times because they don't have, like they need to go face and not on the 1-drop. So especially in those matchups, like Nami is a good example. You can always cycle this card very easily. While I tend to hold it a lot more in matchups where I know that I will need also the Kitten together with the Gamma Knife to clear stuff. And Mirror Match is a good example. Mamaragan, I try to avoid using this as a cycle. I did it a couple times, but this is like the last resort. I would say desperate is the right word. Because you can always cycle it in the worst case as a counter. So you can just plus 1K and draw. So I would always avoid. But sometimes it's I cycle it randomly just because I want to get back the dons that I, for example, assign to something to swing. But yeah, I would say it's very borderline to cycle this.
I think that I think that makes sense. I think you described it perfectly. Okay, so we talked a bit about what to cycle. We talked even in the mirror when to cycle. I know a lot of people always say, always be cycling your ABCs. Impact told me that. Of course, it's like, in a way, a lot of people compare it to Sakazuki. I'm wondering, how do you feel about cycling, and when do you decide to cycle?
So my approach is usually I tend to cycle as much as possible when I'm looking for answers. So since most decks in the meta are quite predictable, I think it's important to always maximize your cycle. So for example, before you use your leader effect, if you can cycle away events, you have to do it if you're missing answers for the later turns of the game. So my general rule is like, always build your hand towards having like a plan in advance. So if I know, okay, I'm playing against, for example, Lucy that is going to play Sabo into Sabo into Sabo, that I need to at least have 3 combos to clear 3 Sabos. And then I'm going to be fine. So as long as I don't reach that point, I need to cycle as much as possible and try to maximize that, especially in the early game. Because you never know how many cycling cards you're going to get back to back. And that's why it's so important to maximize the dons in that way. Of course, you don't want to cycle away like cards that you need to answer threats in the early stages of the game. But a lot of times you will find yourself having like multiple cards that you can just cycle away randomly. And but I also see like one of the most common mistakes is like people just holding onto like one card that they say, okay, I'm gonna need it maybe in 100 turns, and then they draw 3 more, and I'm like, eventually you're gonna get another one. So I'd rather cycle one of them early on to get closer to that, because you never know how many cards you're gonna get that actually are gonna cycle, and you have a limitation every turn to cycle a certain number of dawns, but you don't know how many back-to-back you're gonna get. So my general rule is like, am I looking for something? Yes. Okay, then I cycle as much as possible. If I'm not looking for anything and I'm having events that I actually need to answer the threats, then I don't use them. But generally speaking, I think that's the case only for like Keaton, Mamaragan most of the times. The Dragon, as we said before, I think against Yellow is the only matchup where you don't want to cycle away randomly. But outside of that, I think I always cycle it away. So yeah, I just cycle a lot. I like to cycle a lot. It's usually do I look for answers? Yes. Then I just cycle whatever I can.
And then so to wrap things up, to finish things off, we've got the mulligan. So we're going to go through 3 hands here and then just share with me why you would mulligan this, or if you would not, if you would keep. We got Holly, Mamaragon, Lightning Dragon, Kitten, and Reiju. So we have the 3-4 curves, but we are missing those key 1-drops, and we have a bunch of nice events here in this first hand.
I think I would always mulligan this hand unless I'm against Nami, just because I don't think the 1-drops are important against Nami, but the Reiju and the dog are like very important. So I would say against Nami, this would be a very, very good hand. Against any other matchup would be pretty bad. So yeah, I would say that's the main reasoning. Usually in your hand, you want to look for like 1-drops, and then at least one like guy to play on 2, and then an Enel potentially. But yeah, there are no 1-drops, so I think it's very borderline to keep this. And the only matchup where like doesn't matter if you don't have 1-drops is Nami. So except for Nami, I would say this is a mulligan.
Got it. Okay. And then we'll go to the second hand here. Of course, we got Divine Departure, Holly, Lightning Dragon, Holly, and the 6-cost Enel. Again, really missing those 1 costs, but we do have a cycle opportunity. We have Divine Departure. How we feel about this hand?
Same answer as before, I would say. I think against Nami would be okay, because you have all into Enel, that it's actually pretty good. Against any other matchup is quite borderline, because you're missing like your start, and you also might risk of getting stuck because you only have one cycle a year, and you're basically forced to play Enel. So a random example would be you play in a mirror match. They start first. You have these hands. They establish bodies. You don't have an answer to that. You establish your Ollie. They just clear it. And then you establish your Enel. They just clear it, and now you're stuck. So I think you had way too many dead cards in these hands. Already Divine plus one dog is like bad. Not having 1-drops to cycle. I think it's kind of dangerous to keep this because you might get stuck.
Got it. Okay. And then the final hand. So this, again, we kind of talked about this earlier, but a hand where you don't really have any threats, but we have a ton of the 1 costs.
Mm-hmm. I think this is basically the opposite of the other two. I will keep this hand every time except for Nami, because I think all these 1-drops are not so meaningful against Nami, but they are quite relevant in any other matchup, basically. And you also have a chance to draw, since you have both Sadori and Home, you also have a lot of chances to draw whatever you need in the mid game. So for example, you have chances to draw 4-drops, to draw like an Enel, to draw Gamma Knife, Pink, whatever. You have a lot of top deck manipulation, a lot of cycling going on. I think this end is usually if you have 2 or more 1-drops, the end is very, very good, unless you're playing against Nami, because they're not going to be so relevant in that match.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I think that really covers it. Of course, there are a lot of different hands you can really open in Enel. There's so many, because your goal is consistency, but at the same time, there's so many different things you can see, and they all kind of get you somewhere. So really appreciate your insight here. Of course, again, anyone who's interested in picking up the guide, this is just a taste of the information that Henrico has shared with us here today. He is a fountain of knowledge, an incredible individual. You can find him on X at DogxWisdom, the dog of wisdom, if you would. And he is incredible. He's incredibly insightful, an incredible One Piece player, incredibly accomplished. And you can grab this guide. I literally paid for this myself. I've paid for a number of his guides previously. I love his work. I love his commentary. He's an incredible One Piece player overall. Henrico, thank you so much. If there's anything else you would like to plug or tell people where to find you, I think I covered it, but now it's your opportunity.
Yeah, no. Just wanted to say that I appreciate you reaching out. It was really nice talking. I think this is a really nice piece of content. I would for sure in the next updates include it in the guide as well.
I think it's
by the way, you can check this out.
it's super good, right? I love doing these, and I love being able to bring people on because I think it's incredibly insightful. And we get to go so many different places, which we have done, and there's so many more places I could have gone. But respectful of your time, I know it's been a bit. So yeah, everyone can go check it out. I'll include the link within the first comment there and in the video description, so you can find it there if you want to check it out. And thank you so much. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. And thank you, Henrico, once again.
Yeah, thank you very much.